So I welcome all of you, each one of you to the session, and let's kickstart this session. In today's class, I am going to take up a very important Indian English writer. Okay, so here we go. I hope the screen is clearly visible to everyone.
No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So today we are going to study about one of the leading writers of Indian origin who wrote in English, R.K. Narayan. I told you there are three writers who are considered founding pillars of Indian writing in English. So who are they? Number one, Mulk Raj Anand. Number two, Raja Rao. And number three, R.K. Narayan. Right? So we have already covered Mulk Raj Anand and Raja Rao, and in today's class I'll be taking up R.K. Narayan. For the higher students, I'll be taking up Mulk Raj Anand and Raja Rao again because they were not part of those classes. Okay. Now, here I take this opportunity to share the strategy of preparing any author or poet. Okay. And you have to use this strategy while studying any writer, any poet. Okay, so this strategy has 5 parts to it. I'll explain those 5 parts one by one, so you can use this strategy when you engage in self-study as well. Okay, because you will have to do some self-study on your own. The first one is, when you start studying about an author or a poet, the first thing which you have to learn about is you have to learn about his you have to make yourself familiar with his life related facts. What kind of experiences he had as a child, which universities he went to, what kind of childhood he had, right? What education he acquired, his relationships, right? The literary influences he had which shaped his or her writing, his beliefs, which are his or her beliefs which are reflected in the work of the writer, the awards conferred upon the writer, and the last years of his writing career or his life. Okay, so whenever you will start studying any writer, this is what you will begin on. You will research and gather information on. I have categorically mentioned childhood. That includes his parents, his childhood experiences, education, right? The universities the writer went to, relationship with the parents, with friends, right? Mentors at that stage, spouse, literary influence, right? What constituted the literary diet of the writer, what all he wrote, who influenced the writer, his personal beliefs about various issues, awards, and finally the major works and the death circumstances. Clear everyone, the first point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, क्योंकि मैंने देखा है कन्फ्यूजन होती है लर्नर्स को कि मैम क्या पढ़ें क्या ना पढ़ें. वो बहुत मैंने देखा है कि नॉन एसेंशियल चीज़ों को भी मेमोराइज़ करने में टाइम वेस्ट करते हैं. सो आई हैव ट्राइड टू स्ट्रीमलाइन इट फॉर यू. नेक्स्ट इज़ मेक अ लिस्ट ऑफ ऑल द वर्क्स. When I say all the works, please do not focus merely on the novels. Okay, let's say a writer, okay, writes into different categories. So one can be novels, essays, short stories, translation, poems. So these are some of the categories in which a writer might have tried his or her hand. So you have to make a list of all the works in different categories. Let's say novels, okay, these are the novels. Plays, has a writer written any play? This is the play. Essays, these are the essays. Short stories, these are the short story collection. Translation work done, these are the translation work done. Poems, these are the poems written. So you will make a very impeccable record list of the works penned by the writer. ठीक है, यहाँ कोई confusion नहीं है, and that too in the chronological order, right? It means the title followed by the subtitle if a work has a subtitle, and then the year in which the work was published, and finally the description of the work in 1 or 2 lines. Not necessarily, you don't have to study every work in details, because that is simply not practical and possible. But for most works, you should at least know in 1 or 2 lines, or at least a key phrases about that particular work. You should know that. Clear है? Second point clear है सबको strategy का?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
अब कोई confusion तो नहीं होगी ना कि मैम कैसे पढ़ना है, क्या पढ़ना है. And important चीज़ ये है कि see, let's say a writer is primarily known for his novels, right? In that case, your focus will be on the novels. So once you make a list of all the novels along with the year of publication, it will be your duty to memorize the titles of all the novels along with the years of publication in the chronological order. That is from the work first published to the recently published work in the chronological order. Okay, so you will have to do it if you are really serious about doing well in an exam, getting through an exam. Next is study all the important works with an eye on exam appropriate points. Once you know the biographical details, which all details are there, I have told you. Once you have made a list of the works and memorize them, next is you have to now study the important works. That is, now what can you study? You can only study the summary, right? So you will study the summary of those important works, okay, with an eye on exam relevant, exam oriented points. ठीक है, आई विल गिव यू एन एग्जाम्पल. एक एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं, जैसे कि R.K. नारायण का जो नॉवल है स्वामी एंड फ्रेंड्स, इसमें से एक बार क्वेश्चन आया है, ठीक है, एक प्रेस्टिजियस एग्ज़ाम में. क्या क्वेश्चन आया है कि स्वामी अपनी लाइफ के स्ट्रेस या बोर्डम से रिलैक्सेशन पाने के लिए कौन सा स्पोर्ट्स खेलना पसंद करता था. एंड 4 ऑप्शन दिए हैं और इसका राइट आंसर था क्रिकेट. If you have watched the Malgudi series on the television, how can we forget that? I mean, it makes me nostalgic, right? So if you have watched that, you know he was always seen playing cricket with his friends. The answer is cricket. But what I am trying to tell you is that you can get questions like these. So question based on the location, because every story is set in a particular location. So you should know the location, you should know the characters. Even minor characters are important, because I have seen question being asked about the servant, name of the servant, name of the pet. Okay, I just gave you an example कि किस तरीके के question आते हैं. तो you have to pay attention to the what is the location where the story is based, who all are the characters, right? You should know the names. Then how the plot moves, that is various situations in the work. You should be familiar with all of those details. Clear है? Point third strategy का.
Hello ma'am.
Is point third clear to everyone?
Yes ma'am.
ठीक है, कोई confusion नहीं होना
Yes
चाहिए.
ma'am. Please, one question is there.
I told you a question. You want to know about the question? हाँ, yes. Please tell me your name first. Who's speaking?
Yes ma'am. Ma'am, questions can. Yes ma'am. Farheen is here. Ma'am, hello. Farheen is here.
हाँ, tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your
One
question?
question can be asked from the work that is not mentioned in what?
That is not.
Hello.
Yes. No, please repeat your
That is
question.
not mentioned in syllabus. Suppose R.K. Narayan is here only.
See.
Ma'am, I'm saying question
What
can
I
be
have
asked from
in
the work
my
that's
experience,
not mentioned
in my experience, what I have seen is 100% adherence to the syllabus is rarely seen. What I mean to say is that if you are studying, let's say 3 works of a writer, okay, you are expected to know about you are expected to read about the writer first, and when you are reading about the writer, you will at least touch upon his important works. So you can never say that it was not, if you get a question, let's say you are studying R.K. Narayan and only the financial expert is mentioned in the syllabus, but let's say if you get a question on Swami and Friends. You cannot say that it was not part of the syllabus, because if you are studying financial expert, you are required to know about R.K. Narayan and his works. You are expected to be familiar with his works, if not in detail. Okay. So focus. First of all, focus on covering the works mentioned in the syllabus, right? First, be thorough.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, ma'am, at this time, guide is there.
Yes. So when you are studying a summary of any work, study the summary of that work which is given in the syllabus, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है.
Yes,
कोई
ma'am.
डाउट नहीं है ना? डोंट हेजिटेट. कोई डाउट नहीं है? ठीक है.
Yes, ma'am.
मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट. अगर आपने एक बार समरी पढ़ ली है, देन डोंट कंसिडर द टॉपिक ओवर, राइट? It's not over. You have not mastered it until or unless you have attempted some MCQs on that writer. ठीक है. So please attempt some MCQs on the writer and his works, and especially the work mentioned in the syllabus. And the best source to rely on is previous year question papers. Okay. So either you can use Google to look up the question papers, or you can order, book which has compilation of let's say 10-year question papers. So but do attempt MCQs, because it will help you prepare the kind of question asked in the exam, number one. Number two, it will also give you an opportunity to test your knowledge and its application, because this is what you are supposed to do in your exam. Okay, right everyone? Then next is revise at regular intervals. ठीक है. Once you have studied, you have made your notes, or whichever way you are studying, you should have some notes to revise. Okay. So revise at regular intervals. So let's say you study from Monday to Saturday, then Sunday at least 1 hour keep for revision. Okay. The more hours you can devote, the better, but keep at least 1 to 1.5 hours depending upon your availability of time for revision. I can't stress it enough, because in my own personal experience I have seen that if I completely focused on only learning new things, I kept learning, because it's you get into a kind of momentum where you start studying and you keep on studying, but then if you don't revise, everything has been erased from your memory. Okay. So please revise at regular intervals. So this is 5-part strategy for studying any writer. It is very useful. It comes from experience, provided you put to use, and I believe that you will put it to use. Okay, let's move on. Has it helped?
Ma'am, will you read all Indian writers, Indian literature in English? This is I think 8 unit is this. So ma'am, you will deal with 8 unit Indian literature.
Yes, we will study. Okay, there's this entire unit, and I'll be walking you through each and every writer. Okay, each and every work mentioned.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. Now let's move on to today's topic. Okay. So first of all, we are going to look at life at a glance. ठीक है. So we are studying R.K. Narayan, right? So R.K. Narayan, his full name was Razipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Narayan Swamy. Okay, and he was born in the year 1906. So 1905 Mulkraj Anand was born. 1908 Rajarao was born. In 1906 R.K. Narayan was born. Okay, and he was born in Chennai in Tamil Nadu. Okay, formerly known as Madras. ठीक है. तो 1906 ईयर याद रखना है, पूरा नाम याद रखने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. ठीक है, फिर भी एक बार पढ़ना ज़रूर है, 1-2 बार पढ़ना ज़रूरी है कि उनका पूरा नाम क्या था. ठीक है. ही वॉज बॉर्न इन द ईयर 1906. कहाँ पैदा हुए थे? मद्रास, तमिलनाडु में. कभी कभी आ जाता है कि कौन से स्टेट से थे, तो पता ही नहीं. पता है कि 1906 में पता ही नहीं कहाँ से थे, है ना? पता होना चाहिए. नेक्स्ट इज़ हिज वर्क्स आर सेट इन द फिक्शनल टाउन मालगुडी. ये आपको सबको पता है. ठीक है. दैट ही रोट 15 novels. Of those 15 novels, 14 novels are set in the fictional town Malgudi. ठीक है. And his writing, ठीक है, is compared to writing of William Faulkner. because William Faulkner's novels, they were also, he was an American writer, right? So his novels were set in the fictional town Yoknapatova, right? And R.K. Narayan's novel, they were set in the fictional town Malgudi. So at times he is also called Faulkner of India. Okay, when critics review his work, they compare him to William Faulkner. Okay, now you should also know a little about fiction. Yes, yes. Is there any question?
Thomas Hardy is also known as Wessex poet,
Yes.
poetry and novelist.
Right, right. Okay, now fictional town, because it was a fictional town, so it didn't have any real existence. Okay, but then what happened is, how R.K. Narayan conjured this fictional town. So he was just passing by his town and he saw a railway station, and the image of Malgudi started appearing to him, right? And this is how, and he added some historical details also, right? Because when you are creating a fictional town, you got to give him life and character, then only readers will be able to relate with this town. So he said that Buddha once passed from this town, and Lord Rama also once came and stayed in this town. So he added these historical details to give this town a life and character. Okay, although it is purely fictional, right? Next is, what about his autobiographical trilogy? Trilogy is 3 novels. Okay, so trilogy includes, who's this? Who has joined? Can you tell me your name? Who has joined? Who has joined? Okay, so let's move on. So when we talk about his autobiographical trilogy, means a series of 3 novels. Autobiographical because the subject matter, the characters, they were based on his own life, okay, with different names. Okay, so these 3 novels are Swami and Friends, his first novel, okay, The Bachelor of Arts, and The English Teacher. So these 3 novels, they form a trilogy, and they are autobiographical in nature, that they are based on experiences of his own life, especially The English Teacher, okay, who was written after the death of his wife. Okay, next is he first introduced this fictional town Malgudi in his very first novel Swami and Friends. It is an important question here, because in which novel R.K. Narayan introduced the town of Malgudi? Okay, so the answer is Swami and Friends. Okay, so now you know his 3 autobiographical novels, and you also know the first novel in which he introduced the fictional town of Malgudi, right? This image, look at this image, it will ring a bell. Okay, so this is how he conceived this town, the idea of this town. Let's talk about his childhood and his parents a little, right? His father was R.V. Krishnaswamy Iyer, and he was a school headmaster, right? And his mother Nanambal, she was also a very homely, simple lady, and she had a very remarkable sense of humor. She was very street smart, and she was always committed to speaking truth. So he grew up in the family of 2 very religious minded parents, okay, and very strict disciplinarian. And his grandmother, he spent a lot of time with his grandmother. Her name was Parvati, right? And she was also a very religious lady, well read, and she was the one, right, who started piquing interest of Narayan in mythology. Okay, So we can think back to our grandparents, because they are the ones who will tell us stories. Okay, so she told him stories from mythology, and it piqued our Narayan's interest in mythology. So you'll see, in some of his works he has done translation of mythological works, and he has also used mythological tales and symbols in his works. So the impression, right, the influence goes back to the time of his grandmother. Okay, so she was a very important person in his life. And he went to Maharaja's college in Mysore, okay, in Tamil Nadu, and he read all these subjects. And when it comes to what kind of a person he was when he was young, as a youngster, right, he was looking to take admission in a college, and he failed university entrance twice. Can you imagine? Right, he failed entrance twice, and he was very happy, because during those 2 years he didn't have to go to the college, and all he will do is he will read. He used to read Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, and other writers. Okay, and he will explore Indian mythology, and he will he used to love to spend time in nature, right? So later, when he started writing novels and he became a full-time writer, he used these experiences, these the memories which he created during those years, right? And he went to college, and then he graduated not in 3 years but in 4 years. Okay, and in the year 1933, right, he was in Coimbatore, and he saw this young girl, very docile looking, shy girl, and he fell in love with her, right? And although he was not earning anything at that time, but then he was, convinced that I'm going to marry this girl, and her name was Rajamma, right? And he married her. You know how South Indian families are, right? Not just South Indian families, in if you look back at those times, people were really keen on matching the horoscope. So his horoscope was not matching with Rajamma, and then he was really disappointed, but he was very keen on marrying her, and finally he got married. So this theme of Mars being in the 7th house of the horoscope, that person is considered Mangalik, right? So it is a recurrent theme in many of his works, because this was the sole objection of his marriage to Rajamma, right? But then in the year 1939, right, see, he married in 1934. In 1939 she died of typhoid, right? And then, for all his love for her, he never remarried. Okay, and when she died, they got married in 1934. 1935 or 36, his wife gave birth to a baby girl, right? And then in 1939 she died. Why am I telling you all these things? Because you will find reference to this period of his life in many of his works. Clear, everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Then, if we are talking about R.K. Narayan, then his life story is incomplete without his dear friend Krishna Raghavendra Purana. He was like his knight in shining armor, his angel, right? Because when when his wife died, he took up a job in a school. He was working as a teacher, and then he became a reporter for a newspaper, and he was not earning anything. He was not, it was just hand to mouth existence kind of a thing. But then there was this friend Krishna, Kittu, right, who knew that my friend is someday going to be writer of international stature, right? And this friend Kittu, he went to Oxford for his studies. Okay, and while he was in Oxford, he met Graham Bell, right? Graham Greene, sorry, he met Graham Greene. Okay, and he will keep now. R.K. Narayan, he used to send manuscripts of his novel to his friend Krishna, and Krishna, because he was acquainted with Graham Greene, he used to share the manuscript with Graham Greene, and Graham Greene really liked his work, and he is the one, Graham Greene, right, who got Narayan's works published. He is instrumental behind getting Narayan's works published, right? So Krishna as his friend and Graham Greene, right, as his mentor, had a great रोल टू प्ले इन नारायण's लाइफ. तो ये याद रखना है आपको कि ग्राहम ग्रीन का नाम आपको याद रखना है, बिकॉज दिस फेमस नॉवलिस्ट वॉज इंस्ट्रूमेंटल इन गेटिंग नारायण's वर्क पब्लिश्ड. ही हैज़ रिटन इंट्रोडक्शन टू this work, right? The English teacher, he wrote introduction to the English teacher also, right? Next is he worked, मैंने आपको ऑलरेडी बता दिया है कि he worked as a teacher, ठीक है, एंड ही वर्कड एज अ रिपोर्टर फॉर अ न्यूज़पेपर. उस न्यूज़पेपर का नाम था जस्टिस. याद रख लीजिए, बहुत मुश्किल नाम तो नहीं है, ठीक है. ये जो नॉन ब्राह्मण्स थे उनके राइट्स के लिए काम करता था न्यूज़पेपर. मतलब ही वॉज दिस न्यूज़पेपर वॉज वॉइस ऑफ नॉन ब्राह्मण्स एंड अ चैम्पियन ऑफ देयर राइट्स, ठीक है. तो so he was a teacher, he was a reporter for newspaper, but then his heart was always into writing. So there happened an incident, right, in his school, that the principal of the school said you will also have to fill in the role of physical education teacher. And R.K. Narayan was surprised, appalled, that how can I do it, okay. And then he decided to leave that job, right. And if you talk about his first published work, it was not a novel, it was not a short story, it was not an essay. Learners, it was a review, okay. What was it? A review. Review of what? Review of development of maritime laws of 17th century England. So this book, it came out and he reviewed this work, okay, and his review got published. क्लियर है सबको? क्योंकि फर्स्ट पब्लिश वर्क इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. नाम आपको पूरा याद रखने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आपको बस थोड़ा सा एक बार पता होना चाहिए कि देयर वाज दिस वर्क रिलेटेड टू सम मैरीटाइम्स लॉ एंड ही रिव्यूड इट एंड इट गॉट पब्लिश्ड, द रिव्यू गॉट पब्लिश्ड. इतना याद रहेगा?
यस मैम.
मैं आप लोगों को ये भी सिखा रही हूँ कि इम्पॉर्टेंट और अनइम्पॉर्टेंट में कैसे आपको डिस्टिंग्विश करना है, ठीक है. half of your victory lies in deciding or in possessing the discretion to decide what is important and what is unimportant, ठीक है. ज़्यादातर लर्नर्स को मैंने देखा है ये चीज़ नहीं पता होती है and they end up mugging up everything. नेक्स्ट है अराउंड द ईयर 1945, ठीक है. स्ट्रगल इंडियन स्ट्रगल फॉर इंडिपेंडेंस वॉज एट इट्स पीक ड्यूरिंग दीज ईयर्स. तो 1945 ही स्टार्टेड हिज ओन पब्लिशिंग कंपनी. उसका नाम आप लोगों को पता होना चाहिए. इंडियन थॉट पब्लिकेशंस वॉज द नेम ऑफ हिज पब्लिशिंग कंपनी, ठीक है. ये नाम याद करना है, इंडियन थॉट पब्लिकेशंस. नेक्स्ट है नाउ क्रिटिक्स एंड नारायण, ठीक है. इफ़ यू आर स्टडिंग अबाउट, इफ यू आर गोइंग टू स्टडी अबाउट वर्क्स ऑफ आर के नारायण, you should also know about the critics, what they have said about his work. So I'm going to tell you about a few critical commentary on his works made by some important writers of the day and age. His writing showcase ordinary day-to-day lives of people in small towns. This is a general fact about his writing, ठीक है.